Picture this. It's 8:58 a.m. on a random Tuesday or some shit, and you wake up from sleeping to see you left the TV on. The channel's on Cartoon Network, and you see the last few minutes of the Adult Swim block. You see a few commercials for whatever the hell they advertise at 6 in the morning, before the TV cuts to this beautiful psychedelic collage of Adult Swim's characters sitting at a dinner table. The camera pans down the table as a rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner plays in the background, eventually concluding with all the characters getting sucked into a void as a neon Adult Swim logo comes into frame. You're left with just a brief moment of silence to take in what you had just seen before Cartoon Network comes on, paving the way for the day to begin and for their 18 reruns of Teen Titans
He's nuts!
But let's go back to that collage for a second. This is Adult Swim's current block sign-off, a tradition that has been a staple of the network since its start in 2001. But it's also something that I feel doesn't get nearly as much attention as the other Adult Swim staples, such as the bumps, the yearly April Fool's pranks, or just the general charming aesthetic of the whole block itself. I mentioned in my previous video how Adult Swim played a big part in my life growing up, and yeah, basically as soon as I got what I thought at the time was too old for my daily watch rotation of SpongeBob, Gravity Falls, and The Amazing World of Gumball, I felt the need to use my parents' laptop to go on YouTube and sneakily watch clips of the Family Guy characters saying fuck. And while as an adult I could go back and thoroughly enjoy all these shows now, with SpongeBob in particular being something of a comfort show for me, it was around this time of internet exploration that I discovered the shows of a certain network block. A certain adult network block. A certain... For fuck's sake, you read the title and saw the intro. Why am I doing this bit? While this video isn't going to be touching on the network as a whole, I do want to take a brief moment to give a kind of history of the network. Beginning September 2nd, 2001, Adult Swim was Cartoon Network's take on adult animation. While there certainly were other networks at the time that had adult animated cartoons, with Fox and Comedy Central probably being the best examples, it seemed very apparent from the beginning that Adult Swim was trying to do something very different by having a variety of experimental shows, with most making use of the very little budget they had to extremely comedic results like Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Sea-Lab 2021, or Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which, despite being originally a Cartoon Network show, actually more accurately the first Cartoon Network original show ever, actually played a huge part in the start of the block as the show's style had drastically changed over time, being a lot more bizarre and a lot more fitting for an adult network. But while the channel's content was, and always has been, very experimental in nature, the very first Adult Swim bumps were mostly just, like, old people swimming and shit. Because, like, Adult Swim.
That's the joke.
Which leads me to the sign-offs, or more specifically, the first sign-off we would ever see on Adult Swim. Let's see it. We see a woman getting out of the pool. Another woman getting out of the pool. And that's it. Yeah, again, not very creative. This is definitely the most boring of the bunch, so I sure do wonder what they decide to go for the next one. Yeah, I've chosen to only touch on a few of these that I've deemed more representative of the network history and less, For example, the one immediately after this monstrosity, First Aid, is a much better representation of the network, depicting infamous Adult Swim characters doing, like, CPR and shit. Why they're doing CPR, I have no fucking idea, but at least it's a lot more creative than old women swimming or seizure-inducing flashing lights, or even the ones that are literally just a collection of featured musical artists for the night, or fucking, this concludes our broadcast night. Thank you for watching Adult Swim. However, if I was a kid sneakily watching Adult Swim in the early 2000s, yeah, I'd be happy to see a boring bumper sign-off, because I've noticed a few of these earlier sign-offs kind of share one particular thing in common, seemingly having the goal to scare the shit out of kids. Now, a lot of the clips used for sign-offs were also used for bumps throughout the night, or rather, more accurately, some of the bumps were also used for sign-offs. The First Aid one was a bump, the Artist for the Night one were bumps, but there was also a set of a few bump/sign-offs that just seemed weirdly creepy. Like, don't get me wrong, I get that the purpose of these is to scare kids off the network, but doesn't it seem a little devious airing these as the block sign-offs right before Cartoon Network comes on? Like, I know most kids aren't probably gonna be awake at 6 in the morning, but picture this. Little Timmy wakes up a little early today and can't fall back to sleep, so he turns on his favorite channel, the Cartoon Network, and...
Hey, wow, I didn't like that.
Also, fun fact, this bump became like a really stupid creepypasta that ended with the fucking sun in the background winking and like a red balloon flying up the screen for some reason. And Adult Swim brought this bump back in 2020, and they added the fucking wink and the red balloon. Like, the clip in the background right now, yeah, this was actually a bump. Adult Swim really referenced a shitty creepypasta, W Network. How the fuck do I even transition this? Fucking, I don't know. Let's take a trip to the Last Chance Saloon.
Last chance to look at me.
Now, while these aren't technically sign-offs, I do want to give a short honorable mention section of this video to the dozens of fan-made Adult Swim bumps made by creators on TikTok back around, like, 2021. While I usually hate most of the unbearable cringe that comes out of that godforsaken app, this was a rare case of a TikTok trend that was actually really cool and really nice to see. Plus, it probably distracted all the TikTok kids from, like, I don't know, eating poison or whatever. Cool transition. I only wanted to talk about like 2 more of these sign-offs. As much as I'd love to do a 7-minute audio-only section talking about the one sign-off that starred Cartoon Network's infamous nudes characters, I have better shit to do. Like watching more of Adult Swim's quality program.
The water's infected with fire!
But I want to take a second first before I get into the last 2 sign-offs to talk about why I'm genuinely even making this video. See, the truth is, while I did think Adult Swim's history of sign-offs would be fun to talk about, I really just wanted an excuse to express how much I love this network block. Truly, like, for being part of one of the most iconic channels in television history, Cartoon Network, it's sad to see how most of the block's early history and characters have largely been forgotten over time to make room for new content. And while I know that's generally the case with any network that produces TV content, it always sucks when I ask someone if they've ever seen Aqua Teen Hunger Force or Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and I'm just looked at like I belong in a fucking mental asylum because of the gibberish I just said. Which is why it was genuinely heartwarming to see that at least one of these sign-offs, 8-Bit America, actually felt like a genuine celebration of some of the most important characters in Adult Swim's history. You see iconic characters who haven't even had as much of a reference or a name drop in recent years, like Space Ghost, Ignignot and Ur from Aqua Teen, Harvey Birdman, the Warden from Super Jail, all pictured near iconic American landmarks and monuments. And while there's other newer characters there like Rick and Morty, it genuinely put a smile on my face to see some of these characters that were so important and integral to the history of the block get even some representation. And while I certainly think that the next sign-off, Dinner Party, did a much better job at just somehow nailing down the aesthetic and vibe of the block that few other sign-offs managed to do, it also turned all the characters into fucking abomination. No, but seriously, I do love these sign-offs, and while at the beginning of the video I said that I had thought that the sign-offs were the most underappreciated part of the network, really, I lied. For years now, I feel like when most people have thought of Adult Swim, what primarily came to their mind was chill music, jokey vibes, and random shots of nature or buildings. And while I still think that those things are definitely important to what defines the network's vibe, I feel like it's often the characters themselves who are overlooked. And don't get me wrong, modern characters like Rick and Morty and Pim and Charlie from Smiling Friends are really popular, but I think that's mostly just because of their placement in modern meme culture. Smiling Friends, for example, is a show that was literally created by internet legends. Most of the characters in the show are voiced by e-celebs, which draws a lot of attention to the characters specifically. And Rick and Morty has, well,
I'm Pickle Rick!
a very interesting fan base. But I've yet to ever see characters like Meatwad or Early Kyler get nearly as much attention as characters like Pim and Charlie. And again, I understand that a modern meme landscape is a big reason for the popularity of some of these shows and characters, and that the same kind of internet shitposting just wasn't a thing when Aqua Teen and Squidbillies were still on air. But I do also think there's another factor at play here, and while it's weird to say something so harsh, especially after spending this whole video basically glazing the network, simply put, the truth is, Adult Swim just doesn't care. They don't care about their characters, they don't care about their network history, and they don't even care about the talent they've worked with in the past. Chazington made a great video going more in depth into this topic, but basically his whole point here was how horribly Adult Swim has taken care of the people who've worked for them in the past. Particularly Andy Merrill, who despite having played Brack on Space Ghost Coast to Coast, The Brack Show, and Cartoon Planet, technically not an Adult Swim show, I know, but my point is that despite having played the character for so many years, currently, as of 2024, he gets almost no residuals from the shows he's worked on, and has to make a living as a fucking Amazon driver. And he's not the only person who's had to deal with shit like this. is. Carrie Means, who played Frylock in Aqua Teen Hunger Force, suffers from congestive heart failure, and he had to start a GoFundMe just to be able to afford treatment for himself. Reminder, this is someone who played a character on a TV show from the year 2000 all the way to 2015, even reprising the role in a fucking theatrical movie that made $5 million at the box office. And in his time of need, he had to rely on the kindness of fans instead of the company that he'd basically worked for the last 20 years. It's fucked up. And I know this is a bummer of a thing to bring up basically at the end of the video, but my whole point in even mentioning this is that Adult Swim can fix this. Andy Merrill often pitches ideas to the network. If I'm not mistaken, that's how that episode of Jellystone got made, where they brought back the Space Ghost gang. And they even brought back Aqua Teen Hunger Force for a revival season in 2023. Now, I'm not saying that we should just go and up and revive every old Adult Swim cartoon, but why not throw some of the old characters from years ago in a few new bumps and give them some voice lines? Like the Brack Dump Bump.
Hey everybody, I'm Brack. I used to have a show on this network. Now I live in the damn dump.
And we get the best possible scenario. The voice actors who've largely been abandoned and underpaid finally get some new work with the network, and we as the audience get more content with beloved classic Adult Swim characters. Hey, how about one last sign off for the road, huh? Let me just pull this up here and well, what the actual fuck? No, I'm done. I'm done. Good night, everybody.